Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final day of the AFL trade period. It is done. The 2023, the AFL trade period is done. You're going to get the date or the wrap from today's news on this video. And tomorrow I will do a full club by club review in full detail. But for tonight, I will go through today's proceedings. And as always, the last day is generally where most of the stuff happens. And you had Billings moved from the Saints to the Demons. You had Soldo. Port Adelaide were involved in 4 deals. Hawthorn were involved in 6, 4 coming in, 2 going out, and a bunch of other stuff around that. I want to get right to it all. So remember to please subscribe if you haven't already and smash the like button. I would greatly appreciate. I want to aim for 20 likes for this video and subscribe, of course, if you have not already. All right, so we're going to go in order because some of these picks get put into other deals further down the track. So if I was to mix it up, it would get ultra confusing. So let's go from the first trade that was official today. And that first one was technically that official 4-club trade where Nick Coffield from the Saints went to the Bulldogs and Paddy Dow went from the Blues to the Saints. Now, I didn't mention in yesterday's video because it got posted after the deadline, but it was official today. So let's go through that deal first off. So we'll go through club by club in what they received and what they lost. So Carlton received a future 3rd round pick, a future 4th round pick, and an additional future 4th round pick tied to Bulldogs and Fremantle. So they essentially got a future 3rd and 2 future 4s. They gave up Paddy Dow and a future 3rd and 4th round of their own. So really, they lost Paddy Dow for a future 4th round, which is what was expected in the end. Essendon in this received pick 35, along with Carlton's future 4th, and they gave up pick 52 and a future 3rd. So again, they got a slight upgrade for helping these clubs get this deal sorted. The Saints, they received Paddy Dow, a future 2nd round pick, which is pick 40. A current 2nd round pick, which is pick 40, and a future 3rd, which is tied to Carlton. And the Saints gave up Nick Coffield, pick 35, pick 56, and a future 4th round pick. So in the end, St Kilda they lost Coff, they got Paddy Dow in for a similar price, and they got 40 instead of 35. So that were the main 2 changes. It depends who you rate more. St Kilda need more midfields. They've got plenty of halfbacks. So from that side, it's probably evens it out. And Koff has been into the last 2 years. And Paddy Dow can be a handy midfield option. For the Bulldogs, they brought in Nick Coffield and picks 52 and 56. And they lost pick 40 and a future 4. So again, it really goes down to how much do you rate Coffield. If he can get back to his previous form, before he was into the last 2 years, was in 2021 where he finished 5th in the club best and fairest. If he can produce some form of that, Bulldogs could win out of that. But overall for the Saints, as a Saints fan, I'm pretty happy with Paddy Dow coming in on a 3-year deal. Sauce has been a fan he was at Carlton, and Liam Henry, which obviously happened the day before, where Carlton bidded on him at the time. Sauce was the Carlton list manager. But overall, I'm pretty happy with Paddy Dow, the Saints. I think it could be a very underrated pick for getting him, but not much. So that's a good move for the Saints. Now, the next trade that happened today was Ivan Soldo, the contracted Richmond ruckman, who parted ways with Richmond. In Port Adelaide received Ivan Soldo and pick 50. Richmond receives picks 41, 49, a future 2nd, which is tied to Freo, and a future 4th, which is tied to Port. So really, a lot of players this year, you might class them as either fringe types or borderline best 22 players, going for a bit more than they're worth. But when they're contracted, the club that has them currently has a leverage. So that's why you saw a bit more given up to Richmond than what probably he's worth. So the main pick there was that Richmond got a future 2nd and Port got a current 3rd rounder with Soldo. So they're the main ones. So Richmond probably won that if you don't rate Ivan Soldo there. So I would feel that they need some ruck depth, and Soldo and Sweet, which we'll get to shortly, come in as well. So if I'm going to pick who won this, I would say Richmond won that trade. The next one was probably the biggest one of today, or one of at least, was Jack Ginnivan. You could say he came out of nowhere. There's been rumblings last month, which I mentioned a while ago, that he could be on the outer, and he was. And Hawthorn, obviously very late, was a club he was keen on. The Hawks received Jack Ginnivan, along with pick 39, a future 2nd of Collingwood's, and a future 4th of Collingwood's. Collingwood received pick 33, a future 2nd, which is tied to Hawthorn, and a future 3rd. Who wins this? Well, if you rate Jack Ginnivan, I think Hawthorn definitely win this. And even if you don't think Ginnivan's a great player, I still think they won on the trade pick side of things as well, because they only slided back about 6 spots. And if Hawthorn were to improve next year and Collingwood were to drop a tad lower than first position on the ladder, be about 5-ish picks between the actual picks they have. So really, if you're at Ginnivan, I think Hawthorn won this trade. But if Hawthorn sink down the bottom four again, Collingwood could even it out that way. But regardless, Ginnivan to the Hawks is a good move for them as they need some more small forwards. Obviously, losing Tyler Brockman, who was one of their regulars as a small forward, and obviously Luke Bruce getting towards the end of his career. But I think this is a really good move for the Hawks and could be a dangerous pickup for them in the future years. Now, the next trade to go through was Jordan Sweet, the fringe Western Bulldogs ruckman, who has joined Port Adelaide to fight for the number one ruck spot with Ivan Soldo, with Scott Lycett and Sam Ace on the outer, it seems now, with those two coming in. And Bulldogs got pick 50, about right, a fringe player who hardly played a game over a 5-year period. And he'll be fighting, as I said, with Ivan Soldo for the first ruck spot at the Power. Pretty simple one, and that's how I expected that to go. This one's very interesting. The Power finally got their man in the Sava Radicali. I've been saying for how many times that he was not worth what Geelong thought he was worth. And originally they had rejected pick 25. And funnily enough now, that's the main part of what they got in the end. So while they got Sava Radicali, Geelong get pick 25, pick 76 and 94. Now, you could say, well, that those late picks they won't get used. They probably will, because as you know, when clubs start to pass, those picks technically won't be that late. They'll end up being picks in the 50s in the end. So really, maybe they want more list spots. Maybe then on the night, if there's a few plays they like, that's around pick 40, and they use those two later picks that could be in the 50s, they could bunch them up together to get up high. So that's probably their thinking. But in the end, it's not nothing major. So Geelong were haggling over nothing. They said they weren't going to accept 25 on its own, and they didn't really gain anything significant by dragging this out. And Geelong, as with Essendon, as people know, are very hard to deal with. And Port Adelaide did not cave in, and Geelong did. But in the end, though, I don't think Radicali is worth pick 25. So really, they may have won from that side of things, but some people rate Radicali higher. But in this case, I'll say Geelong won, because I don't rate Radicali as much as some do. But in terms of the haggling, they didn't really gain anything from 2 weeks ago when they were adamant that pick 25 was not enough. The next trade they went through was between Carlton and Gold Coast. Elijah Hollands joins his brother Ollie at the Blues, along with pick 28 and a future 4th round pick, which is tied to the Suns. The Gold Coast received pick 26 and a future 3rd round pick, which is tied to Essendon. So really, it values Elijah Hollands between a future 2nd and 3rd round pick, between 20 to 40 range, which is about right. It was a top draft pick only about 3 years ago. Hasn't really performed much when he's playing in the AFL. So it's a brother now at Carlton, and Gold Coast get some picks in the future years as well. So, I mean, they got a couple of spots. Carlton, the player as well, just swap 3rd and future 3rds. So really, it's pretty easy. It's about right for both sides. I'll say slightly ahead because it helps them control their points. Reed, Walter, Rogers this season. The next trade that went through was Jacob Kaczynski, is officially Tigers, and they were haggling with Hawthorn for pick 49, saying they wouldn't accept that Hawthorn, but in the end, they said they weren't accepting. They ended up doing so. 49 for a backup-ish, but is about right. Richmond needs some plays in that area, with Jack Reel retiring and injury prone at the moment. There's not any other option there. So, and Ron may have to ruck now as well with Rivers, so it'd be interesting. But lines around I would say Hawthorn win this because I don't know, just Jacob Kaczynski may do at the Tigers. Next one, this is a bit annoying. So Jack Billings for a round pick. Now you could say, well, Scoops, he's been injured. That he is him up for nothing. A future 3rd round pick, which could end up being and it's a Melbourne future 3rd. So if they were to finish top 4, that's essentially going to be about pick 50 something, low 50s, which is bad enough as it is. And then to not only give him away trade pick wise for nothing, but then to admit that you're going to be paying some of his wage, like that is embarrassing. It's not a salary dump because you're contributing to the money. Yeah, it didn't work. It was probably best for him to move on somewhere else, which I don't disagree with, but I can't believe it. They made some good moves with Dow and Henry, and they've just gone downhill with this one, and I don't like how they've willed and dealed this one. So very, very angry with how they do this. And for Billings, it works out for him. But again, like players in the past have chosen Melbourne, like, with Dunstan and Grundy, hasn't worked for them when they had multiple options at the time. Could this be the same for Billings? It may not be, because Melbourne do need these medium-sized forwards. And Melbourne said Tim Lemon and Lisbos before they like to see him play as a half-forward type role. And that's the area they need some help in. Obviously, outside of Bailey Fritsch and Jacob Van Rooyen, there's no other forwards there. And Cosy Pickett, of course. Outside of that, there's 3 other spots that are really up for grabs, and they've never seemed to have cemented a spot there. And with Shane McAdam coming in, him and Billings can both play off a flank with Fritsch. And then you have the 2 key forwards and Cosy Pickett. It could be somehow a regular for them. Or if not, definitely be a solid backup option as well. And he's at his best, Jack Billings, played over 150 games now. Can be a very, very solid contributor for the Demons. That move. So for me, I'm obviously going to say that Melbourne won that transaction. The next one, and this is back in time, you go fast track a year ago, Jack Gunston left the Hawks to go to the Brisbane Lions, and now exactly a year later, he's now going back to Hawks in a trade with mid-season draft pick Brandon Ryan from the Hawks, who's now going to the Brisbane Lions. Brandon Ryan was playing for the Northern Bullants in the VFL at the start of the season, and then got a 3-week suspension a week before the mid-season draft. Hawthorn still picked him up, had to wait for a few weeks for him to be eligible to play at either level. Then got some games later in the year for the Hawks and done okay. Had showed some signs, especially against St Kilda. I remember he kicked a couple of goals and did all right then, and some other games later in the season. But he now joins the Brisbane Lions. They let Jack Gunston go. They lost Tom Fullerton, so they wanted to address that third backup option as a key forward if one of the 2 key pillars in Danaher and Hipwood went down. And they've given up a future second for him, which is interesting, but I'll go through the full details here. Brisbane received Brandon Ryan, pick 39, 54, and a future 4th, which is tied to the Hawks. Hawthorn received Jack Gunston, picks 47 and 61 and a future 2nd. Now, this is why I've gone in order, because that future 2nd then's got on-traded. So essentially, before I get to the Marbiol Chol transaction as well, what they've done is they've traded Brandon Ryan for Marbiol Chol. Now, in this instance, this trade, you would say, well, he's not worth a second rounder, which he's not. Definitely not. But Hawthorn, that is essentially now swapped Brandon Ryan to Marbiol Chol, which is an upgrade for them. He's the same age, had more AFL exposure, more reliable. He is inconsistent, but he's got more runs on the board. He kicked 45 goals, I think, for Gold Coast the year prior to this year. So, I mean, that's an upgrade for Hawthorn, and he'll be a regular of Marbiol Chol for the Hawks. So, for this actual transaction, I would say that Brisbane probably still win because they got a second-round pick, whereas Hawthorn got some third-rounders. So, I'll go Brisbane slightly win that deal. But if Jack Gunston can do the best that he's shown in his whole career, could be a handy asset for another year or 2. Now, speaking of Marbiol Chol, that's the next one. Hawthorn received Marbiol Chol along with pick 62, and Gold Coast received that future second-round pick that I just spoke about, which is tied to Brisbane. So that could be a pick around 30. I mean, Marbiol Chol was on big money. Gold Coast still had a few years to go. So they wanted to salary dump his money. And getting a future second for him, which, again, he was contracted, which is not really worth that either. A lot of players this trade period who were contracted that are fringe types, the clubs that are getting rid of them are getting more than they're probably worth, but they got the leverage because the clubs that are wanting them are so desperate to bring in a key forward option in this case, like the Hawks are. So Gold Coast win on this. Again, if Marbiol Chol can produce what he did at Gold Coast last season in 2022, could be a handy pickup for the Hawks. So I'm going to lean towards it being better for Hawthorn at the moment because that's what they need. Now, one of the final 2 trades to go through was the one that was, if any was unlikely to happen, this was the one. Xavier Duursma is now officially a bomber, and Brandon Zerk-Thatcher is officially a power player. Like with the Radigalia thing, Essendon were being difficult like Geelong were, saying that they want this, they want that. They wanted Duursma originally along with like a future second, and I just laughed that off. If anything, it should have been the other way around, where Port Adelaide get Zerk-Thatcher and a second rounder themselves, because Duursma is the better player. But in the end, Essendon do get Xavier Duursma, who can be a handy wing option for them, play through the midfield as well. So the Essendon just received Duursma, and Port received Brandon Zerk-Thatcher, key defender, along with picks 73 and 2 future 4s, which are tied to Essendon and Carlton. I'm going to easily say Xavier Duursma and Essendon win this trade here because it's essentially just a player swap, and Duursma is the far better player for me. So I think the Bombers win that one. And the final one that went through was also threatened to go to the preseason draft. Massimo D'Ambrosio It's gone from the Bombers to the Hawks, and the Bombers give up pick 61 and a future fourth, which is tied to Collingwood. I mean, the payoff, these are picks that aren't really worth anything. So if D'Ambrosio doesn't work at the Hawks, that's okay. You paid up nothing for him, essentially for free. So it's a hit and miss. He's shown some signs at Essendon that he could be a handy player. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that one goes. But that's really 50-50 in the line ball. You can say who wins. I'm just going to go Hawthorn purely because they've got the player who's got the runs on the board compared to a potential unknown player who might not ever play a game. So thank you for watching this video. Tomorrow I will do a club-by-club review from Adelaide all the way to the Bulldogs. We'll go through every single trade and go through their ins and outs and see who won the trade period. You'll find that out tomorrow. Until that video, please remember to subscribe and hit the like button. I'll greatly appreciate it. Until then, go Saints.